So the Abrahamic God is not some mind somewhere floating in the sky outside of this parameter that is giving you guys doctrines and fucking languages for you guys to translate its will on earth. First of all, God already has a language that is beyond any cuneiform, any doctrine, any language that any man can come up with. And any doctrine that a man comes up with is just going to come from a point of observation of this parameter that we're in and looking at the celestial bodies that we are observing in conjunction and in alignment to each other, and the trials and tribulations that it brings to create some kind of format to help the minds of people on earth as a form of a mental crutch. So what you have is really the Abrahamic God is not some divine God. It's not some shit you need to go worship in the church. First of all, when you look at the Abrahamic God, you see that he tells you straight, he tells you that I am a jealous God. He tells you that my sheep should only follow me, type of shit. And when you don't follow the Abrahamic God, you get punished. You go to hell. You are a heathen. You are a pagan. Simply because you don't follow the ways of the realm and the way that the realm was designed to be. Now, God is personally, or pretty much really is all that is possible. So, within this mind, within this body that we call God, first of all, that's a whole other conversation. But first of all, we need to understand that the Abrahamic God was born from the mind of a man, from a group of people that were trying to understand how to kind of rule over people and the resources in the land by first of all following the stars and things of that nature, because they're trying to figure out how to harness the power of the land. See, when you're trying to create a government, there's certain departments, there's certain ordinances that need to be created for you to rule over all directions of a geographical location. This way you don't have a leak or a hole. This way kind of like everything kind of seems normal, right? Like for example, if you was walking around Earth and you didn't have an arm and you saw everyone else has an arm, you'd be kind of on alert. You'd be like, hold on, why don't I got an arm? Everyone else got an arm. So similarly, based on understanding the psyche from observing the celestial body and the movements of the stars in conjunction to our body from the relative position of the geographical location in conjunction with other geographical locations that are connected to that geographical location, you have to kind of come up with a way to rule over the minds of the people in that location. So you got to come up with a value system. You got to come up with a morality system. You got to come up with a military. You got to come up with a government. You got to come up with politics. You got to come up with forms of entertainment that really kind of support your behind closed doors agenda. Because what you got to ask yourself is, when we look at a river, for example, right? We want to now, as the mystic, as the sorcerer, as the wizard, I want to understand how can I harness the energy of this river to its totality. So I want to create a system like a dam, like a hydro dam, so I can start to generate electricity towards, whatever my end needs are. You know what I'm saying? So similarly, just like you harness a river by being a hydro dam, by creating a filtering system for the water to pass through, and some type of generative mechanism for that energy to be generated and passed on and stored and used later for whatever purposes, I have to create a method, or I have to create a methodology or a system similarly of how can I direct the attention of these people based on me already observing the stars and understanding what goes on already within the psyches of man. Meaning, how can I create a system that encapsulates all the spectrums and arrays of our experiences and still harness our energy? So basically what I'm saying, all those fancy things, is to say is that I don't really want you to love and value and appreciate what you want to love. Meaning that I want to create the filter and the lens and the rose-colored glasses for you to participate in what I define as love and what supports my overall agenda. Similarly, with our passions, with our sexual desires, and things like that, how can I create a filtering system on top of that and use the regenerative mechanisms? Because if I want to be a ruler over an empire and a sorcerer, and if you really understand sorcerers and you understand incarnation and reincarnation, because the Jews talk about this in the Talmud and the Mishnah, and this is, and Muslims, your Quran, Christians, your Bibles, all come from the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Tanakh, and all these books. So if you haven't even read those books, you're not even qualified to argue with me. So let me just put that out there. So when you understand the Jewish mind and you understand what it's trying to do, you understand that it's basically trying to encapsulate your attention within a storage facility, and it's trying to redirect that attention towards a particular ends or means. So basically, really at the end of the day, I don't really want you to have your own point of view even. I want you to have my point of view, and based on them, because you gotta remember, they wouldn't even be able to do this type of feat without you or me even being already a low-hanging fruit. Meaning that if we're not productively using our resources of the mind and understanding how it corresponds with the stars, and how each day is a degree and each day is a new trial for us to, create a new mind, a new body, a new vessel to experience reality. Meaning, you might not even, for example, when I say low-hanging fruits, I mean like you might love and value and appreciate something that brings about your detriment. So you might be doing like an abnormal amount of drugs. You might wake up every morning and do a lot of cocaine, or a lot of heroin, or whatever. Now that'll be the wrong thing to love and value and appreciate, because not only are you depreciating the value of your mind and the cognitive function of it. Yeah, sure, you might go somewhere because of that substance, but are you going to be able to bring that, whatever you just did, and build on that in real life? If you can do that, okay, I'm not mad at you. But for the most part, most people that do that, they fuck themselves up. Similarly with all these other energies, some of us dwell on feelings that no longer serve us. Some of us, our girlfriend break up with us and we start crying for 2,000 years about it internally, and we carry that pain with us everywhere. So when I say some of us are low-hanging fruit, I mean like we don't necessarily understand how all these things connect together, and how really all these dimensions and all these realms of experiences are not separate. Like your feelings and what you love, value, and appreciate, your heart chakra, and what you're passionate about, your desires, your root chakra, your throat chakra, you being able to articulate and speak things what's on your mind. All these things coincide and conjuncting each other. So all these things exist together simultaneously, and whenever we're not taking care of those things, we're not doing anything with those resources that is us, then it's kind of, you can't really blame them for coming and utilizing you, because they look at it like they kind of almost doing the right thing. These Jews, these Masons, they look at it like they're doing the right thing, because if you're not doing nothing with your mind, then you don't mind, you don't matter, because that's how it is up there in space. That's how it is. I don't want to say up there or down there, left or right, but that's how it is in space. If you don't create think about it in our own culture. When we look at shit that is trending, when we look at like, this man became his own wave, like that person started a whole new wave. Yeah, all these Jews started a wave, and if you don't start your own wave, you're gonna get washed the fuck up by someone else's conscious wave of awareness. Meaning that if you don't start your own, if you don't make your chakras turn, and hopefully turn for something that is godly, for the sake of creating a spaceship, a Merkaba, so you can have your own systems and things like that, then you're gonna get washed by someone else's wave, someone else's awareness, and you're gonna start to ask yourself questions about God, why me? And before you even got washed under that system, you was already asking yourselves that previously already. But it's gonna play out like a mental crutch, and you're gonna be thankful for it, because it's helping you process your thoughts and feelings, and it's helping you deal with your internal man and woman, your logic, your masculine thoughts, and your feminine, your feelings, your women's, and things like that. Because some of us can't really manage those, and we need something that's externally as a mental crutch. So you can't necessarily hate on the Abrahamic God either, because they just did that. If they didn't do it, another group of people would have basically already done it. So I'm not even hating on the Jews or nothing like that. But the thing is, they should take responsibility as well, because at the same time though, because I got no problem with them ruling the world, okay, whatever. But if you're not gonna tell people that Jesus is just the Son, if you're not gonna tell people that, hey guys, look, we made a book based on the travel of the stars, and these are just alignments and dimensional codes that help you dimensionally shift, so you can create a state of mind and deal with things, because that's all they're really talking about. Is just this body was just a mimic body of what we're observing as a micro version, as a micro consciousness within this as a micro consciousness within this macro realm, because that's all we're really observing. We're just observing the body of God. So when you look at the first house to the 12th house, you're just looking at different organs, different components, different functions that make up that body, and we're just creating our version of those things as a species and as a race for us to experience ourselves within this realm of reality. And inside of yourself, there's a realm of reality as well. So it's not to say like, the Abrahamic God is like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? You could say it's evil and shit like that. You could say it's evil. But again, all this stuff is just basically witchcraft. All this stuff is just basically conjuring stuff. All this stuff is just basically like necromancy. So that instead of them putting light rays and spectrums and explaining to you that information, they just, instead of doing that, they just put a picture of a man and a woman marrying Jesus and the 12 disciples, which is just the 12 zodiacs, so they can explain it to you, the 12 tribes or whatever, so they can explain it to you in that way. And instead of telling you guys about the north, east, west, and south as far as the actual energy spectrum, because if you understand that Earth is a parameter, and when you travel on Earth as a parameter, you understand that it's actually a mathematical calculation, and before you even get to a geographical location, if you're smart enough or just intuitive enough, whichever faculty you access to connect with source, you can actually understand what type of people are you getting ready to meet based on the atmosphere of that geographical location, based on the conditions of that geographical locations, based on the pH level and the conditions of that water. Because look, before we even created these bodies here, we had to create land, we had to create water cycles, clouds was already here, mountains was already here, before we even created these type of vessels. Because first we created the environment and things like that. And yeah, we as an awareness coexisted with that simultaneously, but it's all happening together at the same time. So you already existed before you even had a body, because you're just like a form of awareness. So we're just becoming aware of ourselves and things like that, and having these experiences, colliding with other people, colliding with other people's minds, so we can develop a new mind and things like that. Because we think like when people get into car accidents and 2 cars crash, we think these people died. Yeah, they died physically, but in the spiritual realm, they just kind of had like an orgasm. They just kind of like leaked or seeped through reality, and that experience now is going to be with them forever. So when they reincarnate, they're going to be scared of vehicles that are moving at a very high speed and things like, because that experience is going to be imprinted on them and things like that. But that's part of the experience of life. A lot of spirits have traumas, have phobias, have fears, things that they can't really explain. But it's really just things that you've experienced already in other bodies that traveled with you in the form of information that you recreated, because you're just kind of like re-resurrecting yourself. And so sometimes when we're re-resurrecting ourselves, source or God kind of pinpoint us in a particular position so we can experience certain challenges, so we can start to develop and grow, rather than what's the word, kind of like stop growing. You kind of fear life, because some people are actually like scared of life and things like that. So I'm not coming on here to like tell people be scared of life, be scared of the Abrahamic God. No, whatever the Abrahamic God, because the Abrahamic God is just a mind that a group of people came together to create, and that type of mentality has been used for generations to rule over geographical locations for centuries, because it's like a methodology, it's like a system, and whatever group of spirits created that system, they always find a way to kind of like link up every lifetime, because they be creating the same thoughts and feelings that lead to them being in positions of politics, positions of entertainments, them being rabbis and Jews and things like that. And again, it's smart because they kind of try to rule, they're ruling over a parameter, they're ruling over your perspective, over your relative position of good and evil. So it doesn't even matter, because you gotta remember, rulers have a different state of mind than the common average person. The rulers, let's say the rulers of Egypt, or the rulers in Israel, and the rulers of Morocco, whatever, which to whatever time period, however it existed, or the rulers of England, whatever, those guys, you gotta remember, those guys have way more in common than the average sheep and the average citizen and the average rulership. So those guys don't mind coming together to create events to wipe out populations based on their needs and based on them needing and wanting to maintain a rulership. Because those guys been doing this, those type of spirits that are still in the body, that are using their descendants to rule over geographical locations, they've been doing this for centuries, and so they already know what to do. Trust me, they go deep. They have deep witchcraft, deep rituals that they even do on their children too. They literally basically traumatize the fuck out of their children. They're basically haunting their kids. Literally, they're haunting their kids so they can develop their thoughts and feelings. It gets deep. It gets deep because them as spirits, sometimes they can't even come back into a body because they already became so big and things like that as a spirit that they can't contract and expand into a human vessel. So they kind of have to develop or carve a space, because they don't want to leave between the fourth, fifth, sixth dimension to stay here and watch what's going on in the third dimension and kind of still experience the same highs and the same lows that they was experiencing. Because all they have to do is just get the world to resonate on their frequency, on their signature energy, and then they can still kind of get high from that. It gets really deep. Because think about the things that you like to do. Think about when you draw, that might get you a certain type of high, because you're in the act of creating. So they don't want to get outside of the cycle that they created. They want to maintain the cycle that they created. So when I say they're ruling over a parameter by creating a particular cycle, by creating a particular resonance form of energy, what I mean by that is they're putting you in a particular space to experience what they experience, to be afraid, to be doubtful, because they know these type of energies won't let you leave their sphere of reality, of fear that they created for you. So that's why I always say good and evil is nothing but a point of view based on your relative position within the space and time continuum. So your moral system, what you value as far as material security, safety, and stability, what type of dreams, what type of illusions you should value, what else? What type of friends you should accept in your environment? Who should you look up to? Who should you look down to? What type of relationships? What type of marriage you should aim to have? All these things are controlled and marketed and given to you by them, so you can live a particular lifestyle and continue to be sheep, rather than you actually understand what's going on in life. Because all they did was give you a model of the monad that's of their version, but they're doing the same thing. They have friends, they have relationships, they have associations, they have a moral system, they have dreams, fantasies, and illusions, but they have a much more bigger version of that, and they understand where that really come from, and they're able to kind of switch it around based on conveniences, switch the terms and conditions of those things based on conveniences, while you can't do that because you're going through dilemmas, problems. You're like, oh, nah, brother, praise Jesus, this doesn't look like Jesus, while all they did was just take the picture of a man and just put it in front of the sun instead. Because at the end of the day, the sun really is just the savior you've been looking for this whole time. The moon has been the mother that you've been looking for this whole time. Not literally, figuratively. Because it's teaching you, because these things are teaching you as they travel through space, through the ecliptic belt, which is just the zodiac belt, different virtues and principles from their relative point of view that's reflecting light on you, on your chakra, as your chakra spins, and as that planet spins in orbit. It's reflecting a particular form of information, so you can start to build your mind into into a much more mature, much more godly vehicle, rather than you maintaining a human perspective and not understanding what's actually going on. But they're harnessing those planets, those spectrums, because again, God is all that is possible. So them understanding that, all they have to do is, based on understanding the relative positions of these planets and coinciding that. That's why you have the Sabbath day on Saturday, Saturn. That's why they make all these calendars, because they understand this shit. But they make you think like, okay, we're just tracking time because we want to know what day it is. Oh, today is Tuesday. Okay, guys, let's go to work. 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. Y'all know the drill. That's what you doing. But what they doing is just creating holidays, creating religions, creating certain expressions, certain things that they want you to do and be on these days, so they can harness energy for their mentality. Because so long as that you will pay attention to their reality, you're charging up their matrix via just you paying attention to it. And so they got all types of ways that they harness these cosmic energies from the planets, along with harnessing you. And one of the byproducts of them doing that was the Abrahamic faiths. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all these things was just created via them observing what's the dominant virtue and principle in the geographical location, what type of spectrum of people are we ruling over, and what type of things can we or cannot do. Because the way you would rule over, let's say, a white person is not the same way you would rule over a black person. But if your mind is expanded enough, which they got to that point now, they can create kind of like a more universal system on how to rule over people from a wider range of backgrounds and things like that. So it becomes very interesting, because it's becoming more clearer and more clearer by the day. Because obviously people look at it, people look at the system, people look at this reality, look at it. Okay, something is off, something doesn't make sense. What's actually going on? But again, they create all types of mentalities, all types of warfare on your mind for you to not even question that. And their number one way of doing that right now is just pretty much just distracting people with narratives and things like that. Because if a person really take time and sit back and think about it, they can actually figure this shit out. But based on them creating distractions, monetary systems, jobs to fuel their resources, to fuel their structure, whatever they're trying to build, they have also taken a lot of time off of your plate to observe these things throughout the day, while they sit back and observe these things and make plans and regulations, ways to regulate you and things like that, to stop you from evolving your mind and to create a spaceship that can actually observe what's going on from a much more further out point of view. So just remember, the Abrahamic God is just a product of men. It's not the product of God, nothing like that. We can get together and we can create some mind and call it, let's say we call it the Stamovic mind, the Stamovic God. And we make everybody pay attention to that via the rituals and the witchcraft we create, via observing the alignments and things like that, and creating traditions from it and things like that. That's why you have a lot of cult leaders even coming out. Let's say like Osho, for example. I'm not saying these guys are good or bad, but that's just an example to show you that anybody could do this. Anybody could do this type of shit. But again, if you're not aligned with their system, they're gonna make sure that they're gonna take you out, because you're using their resources to build your shit, and they don't like that. So That's when motherfuckers gonna get taken down and shit like that. But yeah, man, that's all for today's video. I'm gonna see y'all on the next video. You better fucking believe the real shit. The Abrahamic God is just a man. It's just a man-made mind. You better believe it.